We're ready to move on to the afternoon sessions, and I am very pleased to present our keynote speaker for today. She is Professor Patricia Tamborelli. Professor Tamborelli has been a faculty member at the County College of Morris for nearly 20 years, and she has been granted the distinction and honor of being named the first director for the County College of Morris Center for Cybersecurity. Professor Tamborelli is recognized by her peers as an advocate for cybersecurity education and is a frequent presenter, guest speaker, and facilitator at conferences, seminars, and symposiums. So we're glad we were able to have her today. Professor Tamborelli is a current member of the Board of Directors for the Colloquium for Information Systems Security Education. She is a National CyberWatch Center Curriculum Standards member and a National Cyber League and Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition coach. And as if all that weren't enough, she is a Girl Scout Troop Leader alumna. She was a Brownie leader when her girls were active in Girl Scouts, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing the fact that she went on one camping trip, so I'm sure there's a story or a tale behind that one. Please extend a warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Patricia Tamborelli.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I said I don't know if it's good or bad to be speaking right after lunch. Usually I don't need a microphone, but I will use this one because sometimes it's easier. But I'm so grateful and honored to be in your midst today and to talk to you a little bit about things that I know and things that are close to my heart. Just to clarify the whole camping trip thing. Yes, I was a Brownie leader and a Girl Scout leader when our daughters were in Brownies and Girl Scouts, which was quite some time ago. They're in their late 20s and 30s now. So it was a while ago, and we did go, actually we went to Jockey Hollow. That was where we went camping. But many years ago before, Judith said, have you seen Jockey Hollow lately? I'm sure it wasn't the Jockey Hollow that I was at. And I remember when we got there, they said that we had to sleep in lean-tos. I grew up in Secaucus. I had no idea what a lean-to was, and it was raining, so it's always raining, and the hole in the lean-to roof was over my sleeping bag all night, the drip, the drip, the drip, and we were there for 2 nights, and after that first night when I didn't wake up the next morning, when the next morning came, because I was still awake, I said, can't we sleep in a troop house? Like, please, really, a troop house? And they said, yes, we'll put you in a troop house. So the second night was wonderful. Being in a troop house with the bathroom right there and no drips on my sleeping bag. So it was truly wonderful. I was actually ready to go again as long as we were in a troop house or a hotel or anything similar. So, but I think that the experience, not the camping experience, but the experience of, I think, working with young girls and girls who you know someday will be taking over the world. Even back then, and I don't know if it's because I'm the mother of daughters, that even back then I knew that my daughters, all daughters, are destined for greatness and destined for something great. So I really cherish at the time that I was with them and with our troops. And because we lived in a smaller township in Morris County, we kind of knew everyone. So you knew the girls that were in your troop from year to year, you knew their parents, and you had some type of a insight into their lives and into what they were going through and what their lives were like at the time. So that was really wonderful. I wanted to start out today talking about service. And you are a captive audience, number one. And number two, you are a service audience. You're volunteers, you are service-oriented. All of you sitting here in front of me knows the value of service. But service does take a lot of forms. And I think that some of us, even though we are paid in our positions, in our jobs, those jobs still give us many opportunities for service. And I think that was kind of the approach I wanted to take. Not to talk to you about service, because you all know, you do it. You serve. You definitely serve. But I think that it's the times when we don't realize that when we're not in a volunteer situation, when we're not in a classroom, I think those are the times and the opportunities really, truly for service. And it's the service that we do instinctively because that's what we all do in this room. We all serve in this room. So because we do, even when you're not in a formalized service setting, we're still serving. And I think that that's kind of what I wanted to lead into with talking about what I know best, and what I know best other than not camping, I don't know that best, but definitely motherhood, having two daughters all these years who I've had the great pleasure of being very close with, and still very close with now. I see the effects. I see things that I did when they were younger, and I don't mean service, volunteering, but just, and when we came in before the presentation, right before lunch, and listening to some of the things that, that were said during that presentation really, really hit home. And sometimes you don't realize things that you say or do in your daily lives, even with your own children, or with your troop, or in our cases, in our classroom. Sometimes you don't realize what you say and the impact that that could have on your audience or your recipients or one child or one girl or one student. Because sometimes you just don't even, I mean, we all live extremely busy, hectic lives. We all do. And sometimes we're tired, we're cranky. My husband, Joe Tamborelli, is sitting in the audience. We developed the cybersecurity curriculum and program at County College of Morris together for the last 20 years. Believe it or not, we're still married. 36 years later, there were times when it was tough. There were some times when we really didn't know, and actually one of the times was just this last summer, which I'll talk about in a second. But you don't realize the things that you say and do, how it does affect, not just in the moment, but how it's going to affect 20 years from now, 30 years from now. My daughters tell me things that I have said to them, which I have no memory of. I make believe I remember it, but I really have no memory of that. And one of the most amazing things just actually happened to us last weekend. And it was funny because when I knew I wanted to start out talking about service and impact, and the impact that our connections have, the impact of what our words have. Our words definitely have lasting impact. And I actually went to a bridal shower over the weekend. And it was a bridal shower of one of my daughter's, one of my good friends. She is marrying one of my good friends, the bride. So went to the bridal shower, really didn't know her family well, knew some of her friends, not a lot of her friends. So we're at this bridal shower, pretty high-end, not your typical bridal shower where you open gifts and you play bridal games. It was almost like a party because the people that were throwing the party were not American. And it's funny that I think we Americans, I know I do, I always think that the whole world lives the way we do. And the whole world does things the way we Americans do, which is definitely not true. The older I'm getting, I'm realizing that everybody has their own culture, do their own thing. And I just assumed everybody in the whole wide world knew what a typical bridal shower was. And then to find out that they didn't know what a typical bridal shower was because they were from a culture and a country that they don't have bridal showers and had no idea what that really meant. And imagine trying to explain to somebody who is not American what a typical American bridal shower is like, where you sit and you open gifts and you play these games and, there's like paper grooms under your seat and whoever has, the paper groom like wins a prize and, how well do you know the bride? And it was so interesting that they really didn't get it. They had no concept. So they decided that, somebody actually said, a bridal shower is to show the bride how much you love them and how excited you are for this next chapter in their lives. So they decided just to throw a party. So it was just a cocktail party. There was a DJ. There was dancing. There was no opening gifts. There was no grooms under the seat. But it was really so much fun. And in the midst of all of this, this young woman comes up to me. And she kind of looked vaguely familiar. Wasn't sure. So she says to me, I have been looking for you for 10 years. Okay, I'm in cyber. My husband's a retired policeman. So when somebody says, I've been looking for you for 10 years, immediately I go to creeper. This girl's a creeper. Even though she's a girl, I'm like in creeper mode. So she says to me, I've been looking for you for 10 years to thank you Oh, phew, okay. Not a creeper, she's looking to thank me. So she said to me, 10 years ago, she said, we were at a concert, and we happened to be backstage because we knew the people that were giving the concert. So I was backstage. I was in what they call the green room, is the room where you get ready or where you relax. And so she said to me, I was talking to you in the green room, and you said to me, everyone should learn how to code. And I said, yes, because my daughters have been hearing that since they've been born, that they should learn how to code. Everybody knows should know how to code. And she said to me, you said that to me 10 years ago. We were sitting in the green room, you said, everyone should know how to code. Everybody needs to learn that. And she said, at the time, 10 years ago, she said, I was a PR intern. I was a public relations intern. She said, so coding was not even anything I was thinking about because I knew I wanted to get into public relations, which is why she was there, because she was an intern. And she said, but what you said to me had such an impact on me that I went to school, not just for PR, but I also learned how to code. I was like, yes, somebody listened to me. And she said, and now I have 3 different locations for my public relations company. She said, I am in 3 different states, and my public relations company is known across the United States. And she said, if you didn't say that to me, I would not have even thought about coding. And she said, even though I'm not a programmer and I don't code now, she said, it's helped me build my business, and she said it's helped me be unique with my business because most publicists do not program. So she said that it was, and I was like, of course I started crying, because that's what I do. I just start crying. And I couldn't believe that something that I said 10 years ago in a setting that was not my classroom setting, it was not a setting, an audience setting where I was giving a seminar or a speech or just talking. It was just talking. It was just talking to this young woman. And the fact that she came back or said to me, I was looking to thank you for 10 years, I was so overwhelmed because, again, when I was thinking about coming here today and what was I going to talk about and how was I going to tie this in, I was like, thank you. Thank you so much, because this is exactly what I wanted to say and how I wanted to lead in to really the next thing that I wanted to talk about. And the next thing is how, well, this is really, I guess, 36 years still married. This is for you, Joe Tamborelli. I can't believe now, I actually do quote, and I can't believe it, I do quote Star Trek in my classroom. I actually do. I quote it sometimes, especially when it comes to the cloaking device, and we're cloaking files or hiding files, and I have to say, like Star Trek, cloaking device, and then some of them look at me, some of my students look at me like, then I say, Harry Potter, cloak of invisibility, and they're like, oh yes, oh yeah, we get it now. So I just had to put that up there. My daughters have told me that I have something that's called the death stare. Now, I can't do it. If I tried really hard right now, it would look like I had some bad Botox. It wouldn't really be a true death stare, because the only way I could do a death stare is if I really feel it. So it's not something that's fake, it's not something that's put on. So my daughters always tell me that. And the funny thing was, I don't know if anybody's familiar with, there's a website called Rate My Professor. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. Well, we professors, trust me, we hate Rate My Professor. Because if you're a strict grader, if you require students to do work, if you require students to come to class, they're going to put on Rate My Professor that you're awful and you're terrible. So we don't really even look at that. And it was funny. I don't know what made me look at it. Oh, I didn't look at it myself. Another student of mine said to me, because I was talking about the death stare, and one of my students said, do you know that that's up on Rate My Professor about you? That you're really nice and your classes are really great, but if they get on your bad side, you will give them the death stare. And I was so blown away, because I'm thinking, oh, it's not just my family. It's not just my daughters, who I birthed. So I could give them the death stare. But to think that, I do give students the death stare, but it makes sense, because it's something that, like I said, I can't control the death stare. It just, comes. It just happens, and when I do it. But my point really is that the way that we influence the people that come into our lives, whether they are Girl Scouts in our troop, students in our classroom, women sitting in a room like this, there are so many different ways that we could influence you. And that one bad death stare, I mean, good thing I'm in a good mood now. I'm not angry at any of you, so you're not going to see the death stare. So that's good. But I think there's times when, especially in the classroom, when maybe I've given the death stare and didn't really mean to. But it just, for whatever was in my head at the time, whatever I was going through, the death stare came out. And it was directed towards somebody who maybe it shouldn't have been directed to. I mean, it's directed to my husband all the time. He has a shield. He puts his shield up, like from the death stare. So, like he usually knows when it's coming. But the way that we can influence anyone, especially girls in your troop, is in so many different ways. And who would really think that just by making a face, or making a face really that you don't have control over? And I think that's what I wanted to emphasize. For me, I don't have control over this. And if I just get off the phone and I'm angry from that phone call, and then I turn around to you, I can't do it because I just can't. But if I turn around to you and there's the death stare, you're going to think it's directed to you. But it's not. So I think that to be mindful of the way that we influence people, and to be mindful of the way that we treat people, and the way that we treat especially young girls in our troops, young students in our classroom. And it doesn't really have to be young. I mean, I'm going to young because I know you're leaders. I know you're all Girl Scout leaders, but it could be anyone who we come into contact with. And it's not just the death stare, which is in my arsenal, but it's funny because I was talking to my good friend the other day, actually my best friend, and she said to me she had an argument with her daughter-in-law. And she had an argument with her daughter-in-law, and her daughter-in-law was upset because the daughter-in-law felt she yelled at her. And my best friend, she can yell. We could all yell. We know we can all yell. But she's really not a yeller. So to think that her daughter-in-law thought she was yelling, but then when she actually asked her daughter-in-law, she had a conversation with her and said, you know, was I yelling at you? Did you think I was yelling at you? And she said, well, you didn't raise your voice, but it was your tone. And we all have that tone. Because I'm being taped, I won't actually say what my daughters call it, but they call it the B tone, the B that ends in a Y tone. That's what they say, I have that tone. And I think that's true as well, not just with the death stare face, but I think that to have an edge to our voice or a tone in our voice can really influence in a way that we don't want influence. A few weeks ago, we had the great pleasure and honor of working with a local troop at County College of Morris on their Cybersecurity Basics badge. And it was fun, it was wonderful, and when we were introduced, before we actually started, the person that introduced us said, well, if you're good in math, you might want to think about getting into computer science, getting into cybersecurity. And it's funny because I knew we were going to speak next, so I wasn't really looking at reactions of the girls and their parents that were in the room, in the space. But afterwards, well, after we were introduced, the first thing I said was, before we even started to speak about cybersecurity or to speak about the badges or anything, I said, just so all of you know, I hate math. And not only do I hate math, I'm so bad at math. I am so bad that math to me has really been, other than the husband's, been the bane of my existence, like my whole life. Because math, and he knows, he's shaking his head. He always says that if I was good at math, like right now we'd be on some like island that we would own right now, you know, if I was good at math. But I'm terrible at math. I hate it, and I have to really work at it. But for 20 years, I've been working in cybersecurity. I code, I program, I know algorithms. I can't write them, but I could look at them. I know what they're saying, I know what they're doing, and I still hate math. I still hate it. You would think 20 years later that math and I would kind of become friends. No, we're not friends. We're enemies. Still enemies. And that was how I started out speaking. I started out before we, like I said, before we even looked at the first activity for the badge, that was what I said. And again, I didn't really gauge anyone's reaction, but afterwards, when we were done, before we went home, I had a scout and their parent came up to me and said, you don't know how glad we are that you said that, because she wants to get into computers and computer science. And it wasn't anything that was said to discourage. when we were introduced, and in the words that the introducer used, it was not meant to discourage. It was really meant to uplift, and to uplift girls, I guess, that are good in math. It was meant to uplift them, but when we say something that is uplifting, at the same time, to some, it's degrading, and it's devastating. And I am definitely guilty of that as well. I think we all are. We're all guilty of that. We try to say something that we think is going to be positive, and it is. It is something that's positive, but to somebody, it could be negative. And I think that for 20 years that I've been in cyber, or over 20 years that we've been involved in cyber, I hear all the time, we need more women in cyber, we need women in STEM, we need women in computer science. And I think the truth of the matter is, we need more everyone in cybersecurity. We need more of everyone in computer science, in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, and math. We need more people, more humans we need. So I think making a distinction and saying that we need more women, more women, more women, I think the focus, when we focus on that, I think sometimes we're actually pushing the divide further instead of trying to lessen the divide. And again, that's an example, I think, a good example of where we're saying something that's positive, and it is definitely positive, that to encourage women to get into the field of cybersecurity. But to say we need more women and we're going to have a women-only conference or a women-only session or a women-only seminar, I think that, again, I think that creates a problem that really wasn't there, but now it's there because it's talked about and it's said. And at County College of Morris, we try to really, and the speaker before us was also talking about inclusion and inclusivity. And we try to not make any kind of discrimination against any type of student, young, old, returning student, male, female, any gender, sexual orientation, whatever. We don't make any distinctions. Everyone is welcome. Every human is welcome, and every human should be encouraged the same. So I just think it's interesting that the words that we say, the faces that we make, the tone in our voice definitely conveys attitude. And it could be not the attitude we're trying to convey. And even the presenter before mentioned how when things are said, different people interpret it differently. And it's wherever you're coming from, how you interpret what's being said. So I think that the one thing that I've learned, it's really funny that now that I'm old, doing this for so long, we had our first grandchild. I always say we had our first grandchild this summer. It's so funny because every time I say that, I have to say, no, we didn't have our first grandchild. Our daughter had our first grandchild, but I always say we did. I always say I had my first grandchild. And some people, and again, you talk about attitude, you talk about wording, you talk about things that I'm saying. If I say I had my first grandchild this summer, you'd be thinking, well, that's pretty amazing. You know, how did she do that one? How did she have her first grandchild? And I think there was a song, you know, on my own grandpa. There was a song like that one time. So I think it's interesting that, you know, again, the things that you say really can be interpreted in many, many different ways. So what I do know for sure, and sometimes I don't really know it that well, I know cyber. I'm always learning cyber. Every single day, I learn more about the field. My husband and I have been involved in this for 20 years. He's a retired policeman, so he's actually been involved in the security business for 27 years before that as well. And what's very interesting is that we do bring a different perspective to cybersecurity. And the perspective that we bring is just this. Cybersecurity is normal. It's natural. Every human has a need to be safe. And when we think about security, usually we think about physical security. And that's the first thing that comes to mind, especially when you're troop leaders and you are responsible for the safety of these girls that are in your troop. Yes, you're responsible for the physical safety, but you're also responsible for the cyber safety of these girls. And I think that without having an arsenal of knowing how do you keep these girls cyber safe, it's difficult. But if you look at it from the perspective that it's normal and it's natural, and how we keep safe in the physical world is how we keep safe in the cyber world. And If you think about, would you keep your doors unlocked at night? Would you keep your doors open and your windows open at night? Again, depending on where you live and depending, I mean, you may, but most people have locks on their doors for a reason, because we do lock our doors, because we do close our windows, and because we do lock our windows. And that's probably the easiest thing that you could do to protect yourself in the cyber world or from cybersecurity threats, is just to keep things closed. And how do we keep things closed? We keep things closed by turning things off. Our cell phones, I bought my cell phone up here not because I was on my phone, but I bought my cell phone up here, oh, sorry, some Instagram things up there, but I bought my cell phone up here because this is what we do. We have mobile devices that we have attached to us all the time, 24/7. All of us, we do. We live in a mobile world, we live in a digital world, we live in an electronic world. We live in an always-on world. So because we live in an always-on world, one of the easiest things you could do is, those of you that have cell phones, doesn't make a difference what kind of make, model, whatever, the easiest thing you could do is to turn off your Bluetooth and your Wi-Fi when you're not using it. When you're home, in your home network, same thing. This just lists some types of threats that we face in cyber, and I know the subsequent slides have different ways to counteract or to mitigate or to lessen these threats. I think the biggest threat that we face as humans is social engineering. And does anybody know what social engineering is? Anybody know social engineering? Anybody? Anybody know what it is? What do you?
So that's where somebody comes in, like for example, we had this happen at my job where they spoof your email address, they send an email to me as a CFO and says, my boss sent me an email saying I need you to wire $50,000 to this bank account.
Yes, yes. Absolutely. And what it does is, I'm just scrolling through these quickly, this is an example of an email from the IRS. We found that you are due a refund, but in order for you to get this refund, we need your bank account number, and we need your social security number, and we need all of this information. So social engineering is just really exploiting our social nature. We're social humans. Social humans want to help other humans. You're all here, I don't tell you that, you're all volunteers. So we like to help. We like to help humans. And social engineering relies on that. Yesterday, ironically enough, our youngest daughter, who is in her late 20s, she actually was the victim of a social engineering scam yesterday. And it wasn't, good thing it wasn't electronic, it wasn't through the computer, it was a phone call. She got a phone call at work. She's a personal assistant in Midtown Manhattan for the ex-CEO of Coach Handbags, so pretty high-powered job she has. And she gets a phone call right around lunchtime, and the phone call says they're from the Social Security Agency. And they're going to suspend her Social Security number because it was involved in money laundering in Texas through the cartel. Now, she watches all those Netflix cartel series, so of course that's all she panicked. So they didn't ask her for her Social Security number, but they asked her for her name and her birth date. Because like my husband said, they already had a list of Social Security numbers, and now they're just going to try to match that birth date and that name to that whole big database, that whole big list that they have. So, and she lives with two parents that are crazy, that are cyber crazy, as she calls us. We're cyber crazy. And we tell them all the time what to beware of, what to look out for. So she knew. I mean, well, sort of, kind of. She did know. But she was busy. She wasn't thinking. They didn't ask for, she knows not to give her social to anyone. She knows that. But to give her birth date and her name, that in the moment didn't seem so bad. So what did we do? What we did was we called the Social Security Agency. We filed a report. Who was that? Who you were talking to? You were talking to was the FTC? Who you called first? Oh, the Ford agent. Yeah, right. The Internal Revenue Service, right. The IRS we called, Social Security. Yes, and that was what was the most socially engineered aspect of this whole thing, was the phone number that called her was the actual 800 number for the Social Security Agency. The actual phone number. And it was funny because when she called us, she was all upset. She was upset, not that she was scammed, because she wasn't even thinking that. She was upset that she was involved with the Mexican cartel. That's what she was like, because of those Netflix shows. That's what she was really upset about. But then, when she gave us the phone number, and that's the first thing we do all the time when we footprint anything in cybersecurity, the first thing we do is check the phone number. And to see that the phone number came back as the legitimate phone number, but there's so many ways that you could spoof, meaning fake, things that are legitimate, which is exactly what they did. So, and the good thing was, I went on some government website, and it did say that it lists the top 5 scams of the week, and the top 5 scam was a Social Security scam. But it wasn't that one, it was a similar one. So definitely phishing is things that we have to be careful for. Oops, let me go back. There we go. So what we have to watch out for, any kind of threats, phishing scams, malware, things that you download. How many times are you tempted to click on that link that says, this is free? This is a free download here. And I'm very wary of anything that's free. My dad used to say, there's nothing in this world that's free. So when you get that link that says click on here, and I think what we have to be especially careful for with young people, young girls, boys, doesn't make a difference, is they are usually fans of something. Comic books, movies, actors, actresses, singers, bands, something. They're usually ultra fans, because that's the age when you are an ultra fan. And that is a really common social engineering attack, is to use these fan sites, or to pose as the fan page, the fan club. I don't even know if they call it fan clubs anymore. But that's something that really, really to be careful of. So what can you do? What can you pass on to your girls, which hopefully they will pass on to their parents? Because that's the point. Yes, the girls are going to listen to it, but hopefully they'll go home and tell their parents that these are some simple things that you could do. And the simplest thing is to close the doors, lock the windows, turn off things that you don't need. If you don't need your Bluetooth on, yes, do we use Bluetooth in the car? Yes, we do. You pair your phone with the car. Don't raise your hands. How many of you have ever rented cars where you paired your phone to that rental car, but then didn't delete that pairing when you turned the car in? So if you didn't delete the pairing, again, that's just another way in. So you want to always make sure that you keep everything closed, turn off everything that you don't need. And the other thing is to make sure that whatever you have that's a default password, default anything, means that's the one they give you. When you get a router to connect your home network, when you get any type of computer, they give you a password, a username and a password. That's the default. And that's what attackers look for. They look for the defaults. So the first thing to do, close everything up that you don't need. We tell our students that the only really true secure computer is one that is in the box and that's not connected to any electricity, is the only really true secure computer that's never been connected to electricity. But we don't live in that world. We live in a world where we have to function. So because we live in a world where we have to function, these are some of the easy things we could do. Also, one of the other biggest targets of hackers and attackers is systems, operating systems, applications, anything that's not updated. You get updates all the time. How many of you have Windows where you have automatic updates turned on? So automatic updates turned on means you're not going to miss an automatic update. And updates are for your protection. Updates really mean, okay, we found a problem and we fixed the problem. So we fixed the problem a day late and a dollar short, we fixed the problem, but it's fixed and here's the update to protect you from that. And usually what happens is there's an attack based on that problem, based on the problem that they found. So then they fix the problem, they send out the updates. And if you're not aware of that, if you're not looking for those updates or know how important they are, and it's for everything. It's for hardware, firmware, software, operating systems, everything. Also, the other thing you could do for yourself, make sure you have malware protection and virus protection. And malware protection and virus protection really don't mean anything if you don't update them. Because again, they're updated based on the new viruses that come out, the new malware that comes out. So that's really important. Also, those of you that have a home router, Xfinity, Fios, especially Xfinity, I don't know how many of you know this, that by default, your Xfinity router sets you up as a hotspot. And a hotspot meaning that anyone can connect to your router. So the one thing that you might want to do, I think I even have a slide up here that shows it, you might want to make sure that in Xfinity, if you go into My Services and Equipment, where it says Manage Your Home Hotspot, there was a time when you had to turn it on if you wanted to be a hotspot. Now you have to turn it off. And that seems to be the way that everything has gone today, that you're opted in for things and you have to opt out. Not like in the olden days where if you wanted to participate, you had to opt in. So that's something definitely to keep in mind and to look at to make sure that you are not set up as a hotspot. Because if you are, anybody can connect to your router. And if you don't have the right protection on your computer or on your network, they could get into your network and into your system. And the other thing that I always forget to mention with routers is that there's something called an SSID. And an SSID is your identification number for that router. You could definitely disable that. You could disable that from broadcasting, because now when your neighbor is sitting in their family room and they want to connect to the internet, you don't come up. Your network does now not come up in their list because you've turned off that you are broadcasting. Of course, you could also secure it. You could secure your home router and secure your Wi-Fi, so somebody needs a username and password to get in. But how many times, we just had this conversation in class, we live in an open environment today. We live in an open society. Think about how many places you connect to open Wi-Fi. When you connect to open Wi-Fi, you are open. That's what that means. Open Wi-Fi means you're open. That means that the person sitting at the table next to you in Starbucks could be running a packet sniffer program and could watch every single thing that you are transmitting. Every time you hit that enter key with your username, your password, your credit card number, everything that when you hit that click button, they are capturing those packets and they are seeing what's in those packets in an open Wi-Fi. So whenever you could connect to a secure Wi-Fi, always opt to do that. What we have FiOS. And FiOS gives us the capability of downloading a VPN, which is a virtual private network, to our phones. So you could look into that. I think the cost is, what is it, $4 a month or $5 a month? $3. $3 a month. So I think that it's definitely something to keep in mind and to be wary of, that when you connect now, I don't ever have to connect to an open Wi-Fi, because every time I connect with this virtual private network, network means what's going through that network is encrypted and is encoded. That's in code. So anything I do, my username, my password, my financial information is all encrypted. So just little tips that you could pass on, and hopefully that the girls could pass on at home. Also, the other thing that people don't realize is that in Gmail, everybody has Google Mail, everybody has Gmail. In Gmail, you could actually check your privacy settings, and you could look to see if anyone has connected to your Gmail account. We have multi-factor authentication today, meaning that it's not just username and password. They will send you a code, either text it to you, email it to you, you provide them back with the code, and then you have access. But even with that, this will really, actually, since we use the multi-factor authentication in Gmail, we have not had anyone connecting to our Gmail. People actually do that. They actually connect to your Gmail. And if they're connecting in there, think about things that you email back and forth. Any type of personal information, financial information. The biggest thing that I'd like you to know, I guess, or that we'd like you to know, is that be aware. Just like you're aware in the physical world when you're walking down the street at night and you're alone and you suspect it's a bad area, you're going to be very aware and very on high alert. And because we live with these things connected to our hip, it's part of us, so we don't really think about it. We don't even think about awareness or being aware. So be aware, be cyber aware, not just physical aware, and be cyber aware all the time. Every time you pick up this device, I'm hoping at least for the rest of the day, you'll think, oh, well, what am I doing? What am I doing when I go here? What am I doing when I click here? Who can see what I'm doing? So be cyber aware. Be cyber aware, be cyber smart, and these are just some things that you could do to help you be cyber aware. Also, I'll make this presentation available if anybody would like this. At the end, I do have cybersecurity resources. We also have some handouts for you to take when you're leaving. And the Center for Cybersecurity at County College of Morris, we're in the process of redoing our center website. And once we redo our center website, which should be within a week or so, when I redo the website in a week or so, we are going to have a link up there for the Girl Scouts. So because we're going to put all the information that we did for the badge work and everything from today, and there'll be a lot of resources, and we have resources that are separated from K through 8, 9 through 12, resources for parents, resources for educators. So we have a wealth of resources. And also, if any of you would like to bring your troop to County College of Morris, even if you're not working on a cybersecurity badge or a STEM badge or any badge, please feel free to give me a call, bring them to CCM. We could do something fun with them. We have a lot of fun coding, cryptography exercises that we do for young people. So please feel free to call me, schedule a time for you to come in. We're here on a Saturday. We work Saturdays, so it doesn't make a difference. After school time, anytime. So please feel free to use us. County College of Morris is, even though we're up in Morris County, and some of you I know from different parts of the states, take a field trip. Come up by us. We're here for you. We are the only center of academic excellence certified by the NSA DHS. We're the only two-year school in New Jersey that is the Center of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity Education. So the only one, and we welcome all of you from any part of the state. Really, from any part of the country, we welcome you. So thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Tamborelli. I think we're all going home a lot more informed and possibly a little more paranoid, but that is a good thing in this case. And we also like to thank your husband for joining us as well and for supporting the Girl Scout mission. Thank you for both of you.